Dad perfect events.
I never thought a busted water pipe in my basement workshop would lead me to discover my wife had been holding my brother prisoner for 3 years. Let me tell you how what started as a simple plumbing repair turned my whole world upside down. My name's Carl Hoffman, and at 60 years old, I figured I'd seen most of what life could throw at me. I'd spent 35 years in construction, worked my way up from laborer to foreman after starting out swinging a hammer at 23. Retired 2 years ago with a decent pension and my back still mostly intact. Been married to my wife Diana for 25 years. She's 57 now, still looks good for her age. We raised our daughter Sharon, who's 28 and lives in Dallas with her husband and their new baby. We had a comfortable life in our ranch house outside Tulsa, the kind of place where you know your neighbors and nobody locks their doors. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths and a basement I'd converted into my workshop where I could still mess around with woodworking projects and fix things that needed fixing. It was a Tuesday morning in March 2024 when everything changed. We'd had some heavy storms the week before, the kind that knock out power and flood roads. I'd been hearing water dripping somewhere in the basement for 3 days straight, driving me half crazy trying to figure out where it was coming from. Deanna had gone to visit her sister Janet in Oklahoma City for a few days, something they did every couple months since Janet's husband passed last year. I was alone in the house, drinking my morning coffee and watching the weather report when I finally got fed up with that dripping sound. Called Fletcher Plumbing around 8 a.m. and got lucky. Roy said he could squeeze me in before noon. Roy Fletcher showed up right on time in his white van with the company logo on the side. Good-looking kid, maybe 32, with calloused hands and a respectful way of talking that reminded me of the younger guys I used to supervise on job sites. His dad had run the business before him, so Roy had that small-town reputation you can count on. "Mr. Hey Hoffman, heard you got some water issues down below?" he said, wiping his boots carefully on the mat Diana always insisted people use. "Yeah, been driving me crazy for days," I told him, leading him through the kitchen toward the basement door. "Sounds like it's coming from somewhere behind my workshop area, but I can't pinpoint exactly where. Could be a supply line, could be something with the foundation. Hell, for all I know it's just the house settling weird after all that rain." Roy nodded, hefting his toolbox. "These old ranch houses, sometimes the plumbing gets creative on you. Mind if I move some stuff around down there, if I need to? Won't mess with your tools or anything, just need access to trace the lines. Do whatever you need to do," I said, unlocking the basement door. "Workshop straight back, you'll see it. Furnace rooms to the left if you need the water main shut off." I watched him head down the wooden stairs, his flashlight already out even though I'd installed decent fluorescent fixtures down there 5 years back. Good kid, thorough, professional, the kind of tradesman I respected. While Roy got to work, I went back to my coffee and the newspaper. Diana had left a honey-do list on the refrigerator, typical stuff like cleaning the gutters and checking the air conditioning before summer hit. Nothing urgent, just the kind of projects that keep a retired guy busy and out of his wife's hair. About 30 minutes later, I heard Roy's footsteps moving around down there, some scraping sounds like he was moving my workbench or shelving units. The dripping had stopped, so I figured he'd found the problem and was getting after it. Good. Maybe I could cross-fix basement leak off Diana's list before she got home Thursday. Then my phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Mr. Hoffman, this is Roy the plumber. You need to come down here right now. There's something you gotta see." I frowned at the phone screen. That was weird. Roy seemed like a straightforward kid. If he'd found a busted pipe or needed to talk pricing, why not just holler up the stairs like any normal person would? And why text from a number instead of just calling out? I typed back, "What's wrong?" "Pipe burst worse than we thought." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then came back. I sat there staring at my phone, that coffee getting cold in my cup. Finally, his message came through, and it made my stomach drop. "It's not about the pipes. There's a door back here behind your workbench, got 4 heavy locks on it from the outside. You know about this?" My coffee cup stopped halfway to my mouth. I read the message again, then a 3rd time. A door behind my workbench. I'd built that workshop myself 8 years ago when I first retired. Spent weeks getting everything arranged just right. I knew every inch of that basement like I knew the back of my own hand. There was no door behind my workbench. There couldn't be. I typed back fast, my fingers suddenly clumsy on the screen. "No door down there. You must be seeing something else. Maybe damage from the water leak." His reply came immediately. "Sir, I'm looking right at it. Solid wood door painted to match the wall, and I can hear something inside. Like someone moving around, shifting weight. You better get down here right now. The room started spinning. I gripped the edge of the kitchen table, my heart hammering against my ribs like it was trying to break out. Someone moving around? In my basement? In my house where I'd lived peacefully for 15 years. I stood up so fast my chair scraped across the linoleum floor with a screech that made me wince. My legs felt shaky, like I'd just worked a 12-hour shift in 100-degree heat. This had to be some kind of mistake. Roy was a good kid, but maybe the dim light down there was playing tricks on him. Maybe water damage had warped some paneling and it just looked like a door. But as I headed for the basement stairs, one thought kept hammering at my brain. Diana knew this basement better than I did. Diana was the one who'd organized all the storage down here over the years, arranged the seasonal decorations and old tax files and boxes of stuff from when Sharon was little. Diana always insisted I didn't need to bother with moving things around down here, said she had her own system, and I'd just mess it up. I'd always thought she was being helpful, taking that chore off my plate. Now with my hand on the basement door handle, I felt the first cold finger of real fear touch my spine. What if she hadn't been helping at all? What if she'd been hiding something? I opened the door and started down those wooden stairs, each step creaking under my weight, like they were announcing my arrival to whoever, or whatever, was waiting below. Roy was standing near the back corner where I kept my workbench, but he'd pulled it away from the wall. The heavy wooden table I'd built myself was sitting at an angle, exposing a section of basement wall I hadn't looked at directly in years. Had to move this to trace the water line back here, he explained, his voice tight with something I couldn't quite identify. Nervousness, maybe, or fear. That's when I found this. And there it was, a solid wood door painted the exact same beige color as the rest of the basement walls, almost invisible unless you were looking straight at it. The paint job was professional, seamless. Whoever had done this knew what they were doing. But what made my blood turn to ice water in my veins were those 4 industrial padlocks running down the outside edge like soldiers in formation. Heavy-duty master's locks, the kind we used on job sites to secure expensive equipment. All of them engaged, all of them locked tight. I felt my knees go weak. Had to reach out and steady myself against the concrete wall, my palm coming away dusty and cold. "I've never seen this before in my life," I whispered, my voice sounding like it belonged to someone else. "You didn't install this?" Roy asked, studying my face carefully. "Some kind of storage room, maybe? Storm shelter?" "No." The word came out harder than I meant it to. "No, we've never done any work back here. This wall's been the same since we bought the place 15 years ago." I'd remember building a door. Hell, I'd remember hiring someone to build a door. Roy shifted uncomfortably, glancing between me and that impossible door like he was watching a tennis match. "Mr. Hoffman, I think maybe we should." "Shh." I held up my hand, straining to listen, and then I heard it too, a faint sound from the other side, like someone shifting their weight from one foot to another. Like someone was standing right there on the other side of that wood, listening to us talk about them. The hair on my arms stood up, my mouth went completely dry. "Hello?" I called out, my voice cracking like I was 15 years old again. "Is someone in there?" Silence, but it wasn't empty silence. It was the kind of silence where you know someone's holding their breath, waiting, listening, the kind of silence that screams. I stepped closer to the door, close enough to smell the paint and the mustiness seeping out around the edges. "Hello?" I said again, louder this time. "If someone's in there, say something. We're here to help." Nothing. But I could feel presence on the other side of that door, as surely as I could feel my own heartbeat hammering in my chest. Roy pulled out his phone, his hands shaking slightly. "Mr. Hoffman, we need to call the police right now. This isn't right. None of this is right." "Wait." The word came out automatically, though I couldn't explain why. My mind was spinning like a cement mixer, trying to process what I was seeing. Who could be behind that door? How long had this been here? And why Jesus Christ, why had I never noticed it? Then the pieces started falling into place, and each one hit like a punch to the gut. Diana. Diana had been the one managing this basement for years. Diana, who always said I didn't need to worry about moving the seasonal decorations or organizing the storage areas. Diana, who'd rearranged things down here without asking, claiming she was optimizing the space. Diana, who'd started waking up earlier in the mornings about 3 years ago, said she enjoyed the quiet time before I got up. Deanna, who always insisted on handling anything that involved the basement. Let me call my wife first, I said, my voice sounding hollow in my own ears. Roy looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Sir, if there's someone locked in there, just give me 1 minute. I pulled out my phone with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. 1 minute, then we call the cops. I promise. I scrolled through my contacts to Diana's number, my thumb hovering over her name. Part of me didn't want to make this call. Part of me already knew what I was going to hear, and that knowledge was sitting in my stomach like a chunk of concrete. But I had to know, after 25 years of marriage, I had to give her the chance to explain. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. I could hear my own breathing, too fast and too shallow. Roy was watching me with worried eyes, his phone still in his hand ready to dial 911. On the 4th ring, Diana picked up. Carl, honey, what's wrong? You never call me during the day. Her voice sounded normal, cheerful even. I could hear traffic in the background, normal city sounds. Janet probably had errands to run. I took a deep breath that didn't seem to bring any oxygen with it. Diana, there's a door in our basement, behind my workbench. It's got locks on it. 4 locks. Do you know anything about this? The line went completely silent. Not even the traffic noise anymore, like she'd moved somewhere private, somewhere she could think. And in that silence I knew, God help me, I knew. When Diana spoke again, her voice had changed completely. Cold. Careful. Like she was choosing each word with surgical precision. Carl. Just my name, but the way she said it made my blood chill. Don't open that door. My stomach dropped straight through the basement floor. Deanna, what the hell is going on? Who's in there? I said, don't open it. She snapped, and I heard a car door slam on her end. She was moving, going somewhere she could talk privately. Just wait until I get home. We can discuss this when I get back. Discuss what? My voice was getting louder, echoing off the basement walls. Roy was staring at me with wide eyes. Diana, there's someone locked in our basement. How long has this been here? Another long silence. I could hear her breathing, could almost feel her thinking through the phone. When she spoke again, her voice was barely audible. 3 years. I thought I might throw up. My knees buckled and I had to lean against my workbench to stay upright. 3 years. 3 goddamn years. Someone had been imprisoned in my basement for 3 years while I lived upstairs, watched TV, grilled burgers on the deck, completely oblivious. Who is it? I demanded, my voice breaking. Carl, please. She was using that tone she used when she was trying to manage me. The same voice she'd use when I wanted to lend money to Leonard, or help him out of another jam, patient but firm. Just trust me on this. Don't open that door. I'm leaving Oklahoma City right now. I'll be home in 2 hours and we can handle this together. Handle what? Diana, I'm calling the police right now. No, she practically screamed into the phone, and I heard her voice echo slightly like she was in a parking garage. If you call the police, you'll destroy everything we've built. Everything, Carl. Our retirement, our reputation, our life. I'm begging you, wait for me. I looked at Roy, who was still holding his phone, still ready to dial 911. Behind me, that door sat silent and waiting with its 4 locks lined up like accusations. Deanna, I said, my voice deadly calm now. Tell me who's behind that door. I can't. Not over the phone. Tell me right now, or I'm hanging up and calling 911. Another silence. Then, so quiet I almost couldn't hear it, your brother. The phone slipped from my hand and clattered on the concrete floor. Roy jumped forward to catch it, but I was already staggering backward, my vision going gray around the edges. Leonard? My brother Leonard. Leonard, who Diana had told me moved to Arizona 3 years ago for his health after the work injury. Leonard, who I'd sent Christmas cards to a P.O. box in Phoenix. Leonard, who I'd worried about, missed, called the number Diana had given me that always went to voicemail. Leonard, who I'd assumed was just being Leonard, proud, stubborn, wanting to handle his problems alone until he got back on his feet. Roy picked up my phone and held it toward me, but I could hear Diana's voice coming through the speaker, tiny and desperate. Carl? Carl? Are you there? Please don't do anything until I get home. Please, baby. Just trust me on this. I can explain everything. I took the phone back, my hand shaking so bad I could barely hold it. You told me he moved to Arizona. I had to. You don't understand, Carl. You don't know what he was like when he came here. He was drinking, talking about hurting himself, saying crazy things about people being after him. I was protecting him. I was protecting both of you. By locking him in my basement? My voice was getting louder again. For 3 years? He's safe there. He's fed, he's warm, he has books, and I hung up on her for a moment. Roy and I just stood there in the sudden silence. The only sound was my ragged breathing and the faint hum of the furnace in the next room. Mr. Hoffman, Roy said carefully, "We need to call 911 right now." I nodded, not trusting my voice. Roy was already dialing, speaking to the dispatcher in calm, professional tones. I heard him give our address, heard him explain about finding the locked door, heard him say there might be someone in distress. While he talked, I stared at those 4 padlocks, heavy-duty masters, the kind that cost $30 each. Deanna had spent over $100 on locks to keep my brother prisoner. She'd planned this, thought it through, made it secure. And for 3 years, while I watched the Sooners lose to Texas and complained about the weather and fixed leaky faucets and lived my normal, comfortable life, Leonard had been 20 feet below me. Locked up, forgotten by everyone except the woman who put him there. I walked closer to the door, close enough to touch the wood. "Leonard?" I called softly. "Leonard, it's Carl. I'm here, brother. I'm going to get you out." This time, there was an answer, faint, muffled by the door, but unmistakably my brother's voice. "Carl, is that really you?" I pressed my forehead against the door and closed my eyes. "Yeah, Leonard, it's me. I'm so sorry. I'm so goddamn sorry." 2 police cars arrived within 20 minutes, sirens wailing down our quiet street like the end of the world. Officers Nathan Cross and Travis Coleman introduced themselves and came down to assess the situation. I explained everything, the plumbing repair, finding the door, calling Diana and her confession about Leonard being locked up for 3 years. Officer Cross examined the locks while Officer Coleman took my full statement upstairs in the kitchen. Cross was maybe 45, gray at the temples. The kind of cop who'd seen enough to stay calm in weird situations. Coleman was younger, probably early 30s, but professional and thorough. "Mr. Hey Hoffman," Cross called down from the basement. "We need the keys for these padlocks, and we need them now." "I don't have them," I said helplessly. "I swear to God, I didn't even know this door existed until 2 hours ago." "Where's your wife?" "Oklahoma City. But she's driving back, should be here in about an hour." Officer Cross exchanged a look with his partner. "Sir, we can't wait for that. If there's someone in distress behind this door, we need to get it open immediately." They brought down bolt cutters from their patrol car, the heavy-duty kind that could cut through a chain-link fence. It took almost 30 minutes to cut through all 4 locks, each one clanging to the concrete floor like a judgment. With each lock that fell away, I felt my entire reality crumbling. 25 years of marriage, 25 years of trust. What had Diana really been doing all this time? When the last lock was cut, Officer Cross looked at me seriously. "Mr. Hoffman, I need you to step back while we check this room." "No," I said firmly. "This is my house. This is my brother. I need to see." He studied my face for a long moment, probably deciding whether I was going to cause problems or help solve them. Finally, he nodded. "Stay behind me. Don't touch anything until we clear the scene." He pushed the door open slowly. The smell hit us first, stale air mixed with human waste and something else I couldn't identify, despair maybe, fear. Officer Cross turned on his flashlight and swept it across the space. It was a small room, maybe 8 by 10 feet. There was a narrow cot against one wall with a thin blanket folded neatly at the foot. A battery-powered lantern sat on a folding table next to stacks of paperback books. Westerns and mysteries, the kind you'd find at a yard sale. Notebooks and pencils were arranged in a precise line. A bucket with a tight-fitting lid sat in the corner, and I didn't want to think about what that was for. And sitting on the cot, blinking in the sudden light like a mole emerging from underground, was my brother Leonard. "Leonard," I whispered. He looked terrible. His hair had gone completely gray, though he was only 55. He'd lost maybe 50 pounds from his already lean frame, his skin pale as paper from 3 years without sunlight. His clothes were clean but hung on him like they belonged to someone else. But his eyes were alert, intelligent. "Still Leonard." "Carl," he said, his voice rough from disuse. "You found me?" I started toward him, but Officer Cross put a hand on my arm. "Let the paramedics check him first," he said gently. The ambulance crew had arrived while we were cutting the locks. They moved in professionally, checking Leonard's vital signs, asking him questions about pain, dizziness, how he felt. He was dehydrated and malnourished, but stable, conscious, alive after 3 years in that hole. At the hospital, after they'd gotten some fluids in him, and he'd eaten some real food, Leonard told us the whole story. The cops recorded everything, but he wanted me to hear it too. 3 years ago, he'd been going through the worst period of his life. Back injury at the construction site where he worked had left him fighting workers' comp for months. Money was tight, and he was facing foreclosure on our parents' old house. He came to Diana and me for help, just a loan to get him back on his feet. I'd been in Denver that week at a safety conference. According to Leonard, Diana invited him in, made him coffee, said we'd work something out when I got back. That was the last thing he remembered clearly before waking up in that basement room. She told me I was sick, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Said I'd been talking about hurting myself, that I was dangerous. She said she was protecting you from me, protecting your retirement from my problems. She brought me food every morning before you woke up, emptied the waste bucket, charged my lantern. She even brought me books to keep me from going crazy. Why didn't you yell? I asked, tears streaming down my face. Why didn't you bang on the walls? I was right upstairs, Leonard, right upstairs for 3 years. He looked down at his hands, which trembled constantly now. She said she'd hurt you if I made noise. She'd show me news stories on her phone about men who died suddenly. Heart attacks, accidents, mysterious deaths. She said it would be so easy to put something in your coffee one morning. She told me as long as I stayed quiet, you'd stay safe. The police arrested Diana at a truck stop outside Tulsa that evening. She'd turned around after our phone call, probably hoping to beat the cops to the house and somehow convince me to keep quiet. She didn't even try to deny what she'd done. The trial made national news. Diana got 22 years federal for kidnapping, assault, fraud, and a dozen other charges. Her lawyer tried to argue temporary insanity, but the premeditation was too obvious. The room had been professionally built by contractors she'd paid cash 2 years before Leonard disappeared. She'd researched soundproofing, bought supplies from different stores, created a fake identity to rent that P.O. box in Phoenix. Leonard spent 2 months in the hospital recovering. The physical healing was hard enough, but the psychological damage ran deeper. He couldn't handle enclosed spaces for months. Even now, he sleeps with his bedroom door open and a light on. I sold the house. Couldn't stand to live there knowing what had happened in that basement while I watched TV upstairs, completely oblivious. Used the money to buy a smaller place closer to town and got Leonard an apartment just 2 blocks away. It's been almost a year now since Roy Fletcher found that door. Leonard's gained back most of the weight he lost. His hair's still gray, but he smiles more often. He's writing a book about his experience. His therapist says it helps him process the trauma. We have dinner together every Sunday at Murphy's Diner on Main Street. Sometimes we talk about what Diana did, but mostly we talk about normal things. The Sooners' chances this season, what's happening around town, his book progress, my granddaughter taking her first steps, things brothers should talk about. People ask me how I didn't know, how I lived in that house for 3 years with my brother imprisoned in the basement and never suspected anything. The truth is, Diana was methodical. She'd been managing our household for 25 years. I trusted her completely. Why would I question her morning routines or wonder why she rearranged storage areas? But here's what I've learned, and it's something every married man needs to understand. Trust is good, but paying attention is better. If something feels off in your house, investigate. If your spouse starts acting different, keeping secrets or changing long-established patterns, don't just shrug it off. Ask questions, look around. Trust your instincts. Diana had been planning Leonard's imprisonment for 2 years before he came asking for help. She'd researched everything, planned every detail, justified it all in her mind as protecting our marriage and our future. The woman I'd shared a bed with for 25 years was capable of imprisoning my brother and convincing me he'd move to Arizona for his health. If she could fool me about something that big for 3 years, what else was I missing? What other warning signs had I ignored because I trusted completely instead of paying attention? Leonard's forgiven me, though. I'm still working on forgiving myself. He says Diana deceived both of us, but I was his big brother. I should have protected him. Instead, I married the woman who became his prison warden. The truth has a way of coming out eventually. It took 3 years and a busted water pipe, but it came out. I just wish it had surfaced sooner, before 3 years of Leonard's life were stolen. Remember this. The locks on doors aren't always meant to keep strangers out. Sometimes they're meant to keep family in. Pay attention to your home, your spouse, the people you trust most. Because sometimes the greatest danger comes from the place you feel safest. Trust your people. But verify their actions, because the difference between love and control is often just a locked door you never knew existed. Sometimes the person who claims to be protecting your family is actually the one your family needs protection from.